Hey friends on YouTube, I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about how to get a job in TV news or in broadcasting. It's a question I get all the time in my career as now an anchor and a television host in St. Louis. So let me walk you through a little bit about how I got my start in TV news. I'll be the first to tell you, it's not exactly orthodox, it's not traditional, and a lot of people would not do this, but it worked for me. So let's take you back. My degree is in print journalism, so think magazines and newspapers, and I finished at the University of Illinois in 2009. We're gonna have a little friend, I hope that's okay. In 2009 was when the economy was tanking, so I opted to stick around for 3 semesters and get my master's in broadcasting. After that, I applied for sports reporting jobs all over the country. Odessa, Texas, places in Louisiana, Tucson, Arizona, places in Oklahoma, really all over, and I never heard back from one of them. Do you think I'm gonna get that job in Tucson? No. Charlie and I won't keep waiting for that rejection letter. Didn't hear back from any of them. So after a few weeks of job hunting, I decided to go find a job. And that's exactly what I did. I packed my SUV full of suits, resumes, and DVDs, and I went out on what I now call my Find a Job road trip. This was at the end of the February book in 2011. I started my Find a Job road trip in Memphis. Went to all 4 television stations on a Monday morning in Memphis, and I actually had a chance to speak with bosses at all 4 of those stations. I was right out of my master's. I did not have the experience to be there, but all those bosses at least talked to me, made me feel like I wasn't an idiot for driving from Illinois. From Memphis, though, I went down to Tupelo, Mississippi. The next day, I started in Huntsville, Alabama, then went down to Montgomery. From there, I drove over to Florida, and on the Wednesday of that week, went to the television stations in Tallahassee. They didn't have any openings. They suggested I go down to Gainesville, the swamp. So I did that, visited the 2 television stations there, drove up the coast, spent the night in Savannah, Georgia. So the Thursday of my road trip, I could go to all the TV stations in Savannah, had really good conversations with some of the bosses there. They suggested I then go to Charleston, South Carolina, which some of my friends had suggested too. Went to Charleston and first stopped at the CBS affiliate, Channel 5 there. They wouldn't even give me the time of day. I had been on this road trip at that point for 3.5 days, kind of knew what I was doing with this whole just show up and talk to people, but they would not give me the time of day. So I then went to Channel 2, the NBC affiliate. Went inside and said, can I speak to the news director? The secretary who was there at the front door said, oh, probably not since you don't have an appointment. I said, I just drove from Illinois. She called the news director. He came downstairs and he said, fine, if you drove here from Illinois, I'll give you 5 minutes. And I said, I only need 3. Those 3 minutes turned into about 3 hours. A full-blown interview with the news director, sit-down conversations with the main anchor. I spoke with some of the producers there, a couple of the reporters. They gave me a writing and an ethics test. Only time I've been given that in my career. Something just felt right there. It really did. And as I left the NBC affiliate in Charleston, I was so excited. I thought, maybe this is where I get my foot in the door. We'll see. That night, I decided to continue on, though. My Find a Job road trip went up to Columbia, South Carolina Friday morning, and then visited all the television stations in Knoxville, Tennessee. So in 1 week, I drove myself 3,000 miles. Hey. In those 3,000 miles, I visited 30 television stations and I had sit-down interviews or conversations with bosses at 26 of them. I was never going to have that many people look at my DVD, so the fact that I showed up really stuck out to all of them. Now, you heard me talk at length about the NBC affiliate in Charleston. Hey. As I was leaving one of the stations in Knoxville, that very next day, that Friday, he called me and offered me a job. I moved to Charleston just a couple of Weeks later, knowing not one person there, except for the guy who hired me, and moved there and said, let's do this. My first job, I was a one-man band, one-woman band, MMJ, digital journalist, whatever you want to call it, where I carried all of my own gear. I took my own tripod, took my own camera, set up all my interviews, shot all the B-roll for it, edited all that B-roll, and then presented it on the 5 and the 6 o'clock news, sometimes the 11 o'clock news there on the East Coast. I did that 3 days a week. Usually my days off were Tuesday and Wednesday. Very glamorous. And on the weekends, I was a producer. I produced for our weekend newscast. I would get in around 9 in the morning, listen to all the scanner traffic, produce the newscast, and then some weekends I would also be a sports anchor where I would still get in at 9 o'clock, produce all the news, and then anchor sports for the 6 or 6:30 and 11 o'clock news. And I loved it. I learned so much, not only about the news business, but also about storytelling. The fact that I was a producer for a while really taught me a lot about producing, something that helps me in my daily job now at Channel 4 in St. Louis. So I started in Charleston in April of 2011. And I just felt like my heart was in St. Louis. It's my home television market. I knew I was going to be in town in June celebrating my mom's retirement. So I took another opportunity to put myself out there, and I contacted all the St. Louis television stations saying, I'm gonna be in town. I would love to come in and just meet you face to face. One of the stations got back to me right away, set up an interview. 2 stations didn't respond to me. One of the stations was Channel 4. So the day of my interview at the other station, I just told my mom, I don't want to put all of my eggs in one basket. I believe I'm ready to be in St. Louis. So came over early for the interview, called one TV station, they didn't answer, then called Channel 4, and the main boss wasn't there, the second boss wasn't there, the third boss wasn't there. So I said, okay, is there like a 4th boss? He was there. So at that point, I went in, introduced myself, gave them my resume, my DVD, and they basically kept me around for about an hour. They showed me in the entire station, introduced me to a lot of people, and when I left, one of my now bosses turned to one of my former bosses and said, listen, she told us in about 2 hours she's walking into the competition for an interview. Do you want someone like that who shows up and asks for a job to work for the competition? And they decided no. So a few minutes later, they called, asked me to come back for an official interview a couple of days later. I did that, and it just felt right. There was something there that said, I feel like this is my work home in a way. A few days after that, I got the call that I was officially being offered a reporting job on our morning newscast, and I have been working exclusively for our morning newscast for 7.5 years now. My responsibilities have changed. I started also as an MMJ, multimedia journalist, whatever you want to call it, shooting most of my own video, but as the morning reporter, where I did a ton of live shots. The more live shots you can do and get under your belt, do it. It'll help you. Did that for 3 years. You might notice the Emmy right behind me. I reported throughout all the Ferguson unrest that happened in the St. Louis area. Won my first Emmy for my coverage in Ferguson. And after that, I was promoted to a host of our talk show on Channel 4. Basically, there are so many different ways to get your foot in the door, but in my 7.5 years at Channel 4, I can't think of another person who showed up and asked for a job. And when I did that Find a Job road trip and showed up at 30 television stations, I had a lot of bosses tell me they've never seen anyone do that. I have friends in this career who say they would never do that. They would not want to be told no so many times. But to me, I knew I was a lot better in person, and being a journalist, a huge part of that is showing up, simply showing up and asking a question. And for me, it was, hi, I'm Laura. Can I have a job? It worked out. I would not change my story at all. You can do much more traditional ways by putting together reels, uploading them to YouTube, and sending them out all over the country. You can apply to jobs online. There are also different websites like tvjobs.com. You can apply through different stations' websites. All of those work. But I like what I did because it sure got me my first job. And that road trip taught me more about myself and what I could bring to a city that I was reporting on than any other life experience, I think. So regardless of how you go about getting your job, once you get that first job, work harder than anyone. Go in early, stay late, come up with amazing story ideas, work as hard as you can, show your value. I'm going to do many more videos like this, not only about the TV industry, but all sorts of things, and I hope you can join me. In the meantime, hope you guys are all having a great day. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below.